talking about a topic that may be a little uneasy for some, but I think it's really important to all aspects of our lives, and that's failure. So Merriam-Webster defines failure as an omission of occurrence or performance, lack of success, or falling short. The Cambridge Dictionary says this: lack of success in doing something, or the fact of not doing something when you should have done it. So what does failure look like for you? I want to invite you to do an exercise with me. So I'm going to have you close your eyes and think about a time that you have failed. Think about the situation, the people that were around you. Think about why you failed. And most importantly, think about how you felt when you failed, when you realized you failed. Once you've got that situation in your head, I want you to open your eyes and write down, it could be a word or phrase, what that failure in that moment meant for you. What did it mean for you? How did it feel? Word or phrase. Once you've done that, you can set that aside and then we'll take a look at it later. I'm going to move on to one of the worst aspects of failure, and that's the fear of it. And a lot of times we think of failure as something negative, but it's really, is it the fear or is it actually the failure that's negative? And the fear of failure is really innate in all of us. We are born not to want to fail. And that's really because we are made in God's image and we want to be perfect. We want to be perfect like Him, but we can't be perfect. So that inconsistency allows us to fear failure. From the time we were born, our influencers in our lives have told us not to fail. They've said that's wrong, don't fail. They say things like, don't do that, you'll hurt yourself. Or you better be good when I'm gone. But how much of that is limiting our children? How much of that is limiting their psychological ability to be resilient in the face of failure? I'm going to show a clip of a video, and you'll see many famous faces, familiar faces, talking about their failure and how they felt in that failure. And I think it really just shows how everyone fears failure. You're not the only one. Not sure why it won't play. It won't play, but in the video they're just speaking about how their failure has impacted them and how they felt in that failure. And at the end, they ask a question, what are you going to do? So you failed, but now what are you going to do about it? And I think to answer that question, we have to answer an even more important question, is failure actually negative? And I've talked about that previously, but it is the ultimate question. Is failure actually negative? Does it have a negative impact on our lives overall? Does it negatively impact who we are as people? But the truth is, while failure is hard and it hurts, the truth is failure allows us to grow. It pushes us to the next level. It teaches us what not to do. And oftentimes that's a lot better than teaching us what to do in some situations. So failure allows us to succeed to another level, because when we fail, we never want to do that again. So we're going to do it even better that next time. And then when we fail again, we're going to do even better that next time. And so I have a diagram to show this. When we have success with failure versus success with just success. So when we fail, the failure is like the plateau, the top of that step. And to achieve, all you have to do is step on the next step. But once you do that, you're even higher than you were before you failed. So the failure allows you to exceed and achieve higher than you can ever imagine until you reach the top. But if you have a success and you never fail, and you just continue to succeed and succeed, it becomes a cycle. You go around in this cycle and you never finish anything. You finish it by succeeding, but you never get to the top. You just continue with the same results. So there are 3 ways to transform your failure into success. And I'll unpack these as we go along, but the first is be resilient. Change your mindset and cultivate your failure. Be resilient. To be a resilient person means that you're able to withstand and come back from the hard times or hard situations in your life. Psychology Today says adversity is a fact of life. Resilience is that ineffable quality that allows some people to be knocked down by life and come back at least as strong as before. Rather than letting difficulties or failure overcome them and drain their resolve, they find a way to rise from the ashes. When we fail, we must continue to be resilient, to bounce back, to come back even further. Psychologists have identified factors that make a person resilient. So if you have these 4 qualities, you're more likely to be resilient. If you have a positive attitude, if you display optimism, you have great emotional regulation, and you have the ability to see failure as helpful. Psychology Today then goes on to say, resilience is about getting through the pain and disappointment without letting that crush your spirit. And really, I think this is the most important part about being resilient in your failure, is you can't let the failure crush your spirit. You can't let it affect who you are. You just have to keep going and allow yourself to succeed even more. Change your mindset. When you fail, what do you think about yourself? What are the thoughts that go through your head? Are you attributing it to who you are as a person? Because if you are, you need to change your mindset. Carol Dweck, the founder of fixed versus growth mindset, would say that a person with a fixed mindset would think of failure as it's just there, it's going to happen, there's nothing I can do about it, it's set in stone. But a person with a growth mindset will see that failure as something that they can build upon, that they can become a better person. She goes on to give 5 aspects that a person with a growth mindset has. They embrace challenges. They persist in the face of setbacks. See effort as a path to mastery. Learn from criticism. And find inspiration in the success of others. Here's just a quote that I thought was interesting by her. She says, when there's a setback, someone with a fixed mindset will start thinking, maybe I don't have what it takes. They then get defensive and give up. A hallmark of success, of a successful person, is that they persist in the face of an obstacle. And often these obstacles are blessings in disguise. Cultivate your failure. When I was preparing this presentation, I started thinking of an analogy. What if we thought of our failure as seeds and ourselves or our path as the soil? And we have 2 options. We can either throw those seeds away and nothing ever comes of it, or we can plant it and we can nurture it and we can water it and we can cultivate it, and eventually it'll sprout and it'll grow into a flower, and we have a beautiful flower. And then we will fail again, because it's going to happen. We're going to fail again. But if we plant that seed and we water and nurture it and we cultivate it, then eventually we'll have another flower. And that goes on until we have a field of flowers and a field of success. Psychology Today says this quote, "To fail is deeply human, as is the capacity to inspect, learn from, and transcend failure. Ultimately, failures are stumbling blocks on the proverbial path to success." We're going to stumble. It's going to happen. But what do you do when you stumble? Are you going to cultivate from it? Are you going to use it? Or are you going to just lay down? They go on to say, that doesn't mean, however, that one needs to pretend that it's pleasant to fail or ignore the frustration that arises when a goal falls out of reach. Instead, accepting the feelings that come with failure, being curious about them, and resisting the urge to judge oneself too harshly are all critical skills to practice. It's not something something that we really want to hear, but the hurt is necessary. The hurt of failure is necessary. Because if it didn't hurt, then we wouldn't push ourselves further. We wouldn't go anywhere. Just like the cycle before, we would just stay in a cycle. If it hurts, then we'll find a way to succeed. We'll find a way to do it better. We'll find a way to not do that same thing that led us to fail before. Tim Harford, he's an economist, and he's written many successful books on how to be successful in our economy. And he wrote this book called Adapt, Why Success Always Starts with Failure. And I just added some quotes from his book that I thought were pretty interesting. The first one is, few of our own failures are fatal. Few of your failures are going to kill you unless you allow them to. You must cultivate that failure. Success comes through rapidly fixing our mistakes rather than getting things right the first time. You're not going to get it right the first time. But the way you bounce back is by fixing those mistakes and continuing to be better. No plan survives a first contact with the enemy. What matters is how quickly the leader is able to adapt. The enemy is going to come after you, and most likely it's going to come after you when you are succeeding. So how are you reacting to that? Are you adapting to that? Can you cultivate that and turn it into even more success? Here's some examples of how some have cultivated their failure. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest minds that we could ever think of. He didn't speak till the age of 4, almost flunked out of his university, and his own father labeled him as a failure. Can you imagine that? Your own father labeling you as a failure. But look what he did with that. Look how he cultivated that into who he became. He said this, learn from yesterday, live for today, and hope for tomorrow. Michael Jordan, arguably one of the best basketball players we could ever have on this earth. As a sophomore in high school, he didn't make his varsity team. He was put on JV. And look where that got him. He didn't let that hurt his pride. He kept going and he succeeded. Here's a quote by Michael Jordan. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Serena Williams, she's arguably one of the best athletes in the world, and that's saying something for being a female in a sea of males in that category. She says, I really think a champion is defined not by their wins, but by how they can recover when they fall. I've fallen several times. Each time I just get up and dust myself off and pray, and I'm able to do better, or am I able to get back to the level that I want to be on? How has failure impacted my vocational journey? I think it's been a huge impact so far, and I know it's going to continue to be. When you look at my Strengths Finder or my Enneagram test, at the top is Achiever Competition. So it's no hiding that I don't like failure. I like to achieve in everything that I do. But failure comes, just like it does with anybody else. And I think the first time I really failed, failure that can impact who you are as a person, came in my senior year of high school. And then on into my freshman year and sophomore year in college. But I didn't have the tools. I didn't know how to be resilient in that. I didn't know how to change my mindset. I didn't know how to look forward. I didn't know how to cultivate my failure. And I allowed those failures to crush my spirit. I allowed it to change who I was. I allowed it to change my mind about who I was in Christ. And I found myself in the deepest hole. A hole that I dug myself, and I knew that I dug it, but how do you get out? And it wasn't until I came to Cornerstone that I began to have a change of mindset. And that came because I realized that God has already written my path. So it doesn't matter what failures I have here, as long as I look to Christ, it is already written for me. It's already planned out, so why are you worried about the things that are happening today and the failures that you've gone through if it's already written? So I started thinking that, and then I began, through that, God gave me the tools. I began to become resilient. I began to change how I was thinking about failure. And I began to cultivate that failure into success. And as I look at my vocational journey and where I'm going, I go back to that stair analogy about failure and how you step up each time you fail. And I've stepped up each time I failed ever since I had that realization. And I continue to step up. And as I look up the stairwell, I can see Christ. And I can see where I need to go, and I see I need to follow him. And as long as I follow him, I know I'll be where I need to be. But as I look down, I can see how far I've come and how far God has brought me from. And I'm really grateful for that. And so as I go on into my future vocation, I'm really excited because I have these tools and I know what to do with my failure. And I know that as long as I keep looking at Christ, he'll provide everything I need. So I want to ask you to pull out your note cards. And read what you wrote about failure. Read what you felt. Take a notice about, is it negative? And now I want you to flip that card over. And with the information I've now given you, I want you to think about that failure again. And I want you to rewrite a word or phrase with your new ideas about failure. How can you cultivate that failure? Be resilient. Your mindset. And as you leave here today, I want to challenge you to allow your failure to move you into success. Use what you wrote on the back of that card and push towards success.